Hello and welcome to Destination Insight with me, Rory Smith. This evening we go on a mission in Newry and Mourne to take an insight into parking charges in the towns and cities across Northern Ireland. I wanted to find out why we are being charged for parking, what is the reason for the high volume of fines being issued in Northern Ireland, and why can we not have free parking like it was in the past. We will also be speaking to Anita Carroll from Daisy Hill to talk about the charges in the car parks. A fascinating show today that you just don't want to miss. And last week we had lots of feedback from the show, and if you want to get in touch with us regarding anything about this evening, then here are all the details that you need. Your voice to be heard on the show, and there are plenty of ways to get in touch with us. Check out our website destinationnewry.com, comment on our Facebook page Destination Newry, or send us a tweet to @DesNewry. You can also write to me directly on my email, rory@destinationnewry.com, message me on my Facebook page, facebook.com/official Rory Smith, or send me a tweet to @RoryESmith. I'll be reading each and every email, Facebook comment and tweet sent into us. This is your show and we want you to be a part of it, so do get in touch with us. Hugh from Transport Northern Ireland Parking Enforcement Unit will be here in just a moment. But before we speak to Hugh, let's have a look at the parking charges that exist in Northern Ireland today. Parking charges on the streets of Newry have been introduced since 2008, bringing anger and outrage to many residents of the cities and outside towns. The idea of paying to park your car is an idea which many people do not understand nor agree with. There may be people who say it's the government's tactical way of collecting more finance from the people of Northern Ireland. The city of Newry has approximately 440 on-street parking spaces. Many residents of the Newry and Mourne area are outraged. Now, I went out and about in the Newry area and asked the local people what they thought of the parking charges on the streets, and here is what they had to say about it. How do you feel about the car parking charges here in Newry?
It's very, very bad. They should all be free, so they should. It shouldn't be no charges at all.
Do you think it's too expensive?
Yes, definitely too expensive. It's not fair.
Do you think it would be chaos if they weren't enforced though?
No.
Feel about the car parking charges in Newry?
Well, I don't think they're too bad on Hill Street. It's only about 30 or 40p. I don't park that often, but I don't think they're too bad.
What about in the Quays and the Buttercrane?
I don't park there that often. I think is it about £1 for an hour or whatever. Well, I go to Sainsbury's, so we'll get the discount if I park in there, so I don't mind, because I'm doing my shopping anyway, and it doesn't cost me anything, but I don't be there for much longer, so...
So it's no issue to you then?
Not really.
Now, Hugh from the Transport Northern Ireland Parking Enforcement Unit is with me now to explain the reasons behind the parking charges here in Northern Ireland and to tell us where exactly our money is going. Now, you're very welcome along to the programme, Hugh. Now, I just want to know, first off, I mean, taken as a general public, what the public think. You know, they're saying that they pay for the car, they pay for the insurance, they pay for their petrol or diesel, their MOT and all this other stuff. When they go into the city, they then have to pay for parking the car. So what is the aim behind charging people to park the car in the city?
Well, good afternoon, Rory, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain parking enforcement and some of the rules and regulations of how to park properly. Newry is a city, like any other progressive city. It needs a way to manage the traffic properly. It's an evolution of the build-up of volumes of traffic against parking space that remains constant, and there's often a competition for space, and the best way to manage that is to put parameters on how long somebody can park for or where they can park for safety and for traffic progression reasons. And the charge element obviously is introduced because to provide that service costs. So there is a cost towards providing a parking enforcement service.
I mean, do you think it would be chaos if there was no enforcement in the cities?
I believe so. I think in a village in Wales a number of years ago they did a trial removing parking enforcement, I think the town run into chaos. And exactly that would happen. Not only would it run into chaos with traffic progression and bottlenecking, but shoppers, retailers would miss out on getting shoppers to park because they simply would have nowhere to park. Employees, all-day parkers, people perhaps leaving their car to maybe travel to Belfast for a day, would occupy the space that could be there for a shopper. So yes, I believe that the requirement to have parking enforcement to ensure there's a turnaround of space for, to allow all shoppers and all users equal opportunity to park, and with that comes a cost.
And the cost as well, I mean, on general terms, we're looking at 40p an hour. Now, if someone is using the car parking space every day for work purposes or whatever it may be, if they're going to the shop every day, 40p an hour doesn't sound that much, but it does add up to quite a bit. Do you think that the prices are a bit too high?
They may be to somebody who doesn't want to pay for parking at any rate, but by comparison across the rest of Northern Ireland and the UK and most elsewhere in Europe as a whole, 40 pence per hour is very, very small. Belfast,
but it does add up during
it does
the week.
add up.
It does add up.
There is that for sure. I mean, obviously, the costs of parking per hour has been kept very low. In fact, they were increased about 2 years ago. Prior to that, the previous increase had been something like 13 years prior to that. So they've been kept at a very low level. And obviously with the introduction of parking enforcement, we needed some sort of cost recovery. Not just the enforcement, but the cost of keeping a car park, the cost of maintaining the machines, the cost of repairing the car parks.
So I want to ask you as well, here in Newry, I mean, if we go out our door here and we turn left, we would have to pay for parking in that car. Now, if we turn right, we don't have to pay for that car park. Why are some streets paid and some streets not?
Well, that was a decision taken in consultation with traders and with councillors at the time by Road Service, and they came up with those streets that they deemed it necessary to keep a turnaround of traffic, perhaps those where there was more retail, more on-street retail. And clearly, the more central you are to the city, then the more the competition for the space will be, and hence the introduction of the charge, because there's more effort in which to manage that, to ensure that spaces are freed up.
So a lot of research was done beforehand.
Certainly.
As to decide.
Research and consultation. This was never dropped in overnight. It was through consultation and through agreement and participation by the Newry retailers themselves.
And there's a reason for it all.
And they welcomed it. It was introduced. The on-street charging was introduced into Newry in 2008 through that consultation process, because they recognised that they were being denied shoppers coming to the door. It was being occupied by what we call the all-day parkers, be it the employee themselves, be it the retailer themselves, but they recognised that the space outside my door could quite easily be given over to somebody who wants to.
So it was actually the shoppers that wanted, or the shop owners that wanted it as well?
Essentially. I mean, they could see that their town was basically gridlocked. They could recognise that in order to free up space, something had to be done. And in order to provide an enforcement service, a cost had to be recovered.
I mean, it's funny because there are people out there who may say that it's actually putting away custom from the shops because they have to pay for it. So, you know, if we had to go to Newry, we wouldn't shop there because you have to pay for it. But if we went to another town, we would go there, a smaller town, because you don't have to pay for it.
Well, I mean, there is that argument, but I mean, I look outside the streets and I see the spaces are fairly well occupied, so maybe that argument doesn't stack up, essentially. I mean, I've heard the argument, oh my goodness, there's a charge or I'll stay away, but somebody's using the spaces, and I think it's safe to assume that a fair amount of those spaces are being taken by shoppers, the very people we designed the spaces to avail for.
So when we put that 40 pence into the meter, where exactly does that money go to? What is it being for? What is it being paid for?
It's being paid to recover the cost of providing the parking enforcement service first and foremost, but in the bigger picture it goes towards the Department for Regional Development to pay for frontline services, everything that what the now called Transport NI provide, everything from winter maintenance to the repair of potholes to the maintenance of street lights to the repair of our own parking machines. So it's a revenue generator to help pay for the service, not just the parking enforcement service, but the...
I mean, it's relatively new that this idea has come in that we have to pay for parking on the streets, relatively new. Before that, how did you pay for all of this stuff?
Well, I mean, before the introduction of decriminalised parking enforcement, it was traffic wardens, as they were then known, were members of the police, and that would have been paid through their own funding mechanisms. But whenever the police, obviously, they had other priorities for which parking enforcement was their very least, then we had to find some way of managing traffic and managing parking, and with that came a cost. And simultaneously, we had to put, it's not, I mean, charging for car parking is not new. Whilst it may be new, relatively new on street in Newry since 2008, before that, I mean, most of the charged car parks in Newry have always been charged car parks, for the very reason of, if not paying for a parking enforcement service, but for paying for the rates of the car parks, for paying for the kiosk attendants as they used to be, but least of all to pay for the maintenance of the car park. For
So
the
in
cleaning.
other words, we need it for ourselves. We need to pay for ourselves.
If you want to be a progressive city, if you want to be to be seen as a clean and well-maintained and an inviting city, then you need to demonstrate that you've got a good traffic management system and that it looks well above everything else and that it's properly maintained.
And
I
we're
think-
paying towards that.
I think people are used to the idea of paying for a good service, a quality service. I mean, it's probably true you don't get anything for nothing. To provide that good service, there is a cost, and the cost of parking in Newry is very, very small by comparison to others. Belfast is £1.20 per hour, for example, compared to Newry is 40 pence an hour. And most other areas, be it in the Republic of Ireland or across the mainland GB, are well in excess of 80, 90 and £1 per hour.
So we're much cheaper here in Newry. We're
Absolutely,
much cheaper.
absolutely.
So I want to let's just take a look at the fines that exist here in Northern Ireland. The current price of a parking ticket in Northern Ireland is £90. However, if you pay within 14 days, you will receive a 50% discount and you may pay £45. If a parking ticket is not paid within 28 days, a notice to owner will be given to the registered keeper of the vehicle. When a notice to owner has been given, the parking ticket must be paid within 28 days or a charge certificate will be issued. The effect of a charge certificate is to increase the amount from £90 to £135. Once a parking ticket is issued, it cannot be cancelled by a traffic attendant. If you feel it should be cancelled, you must write to a parking enforcement processing unit at the address given on the reverse side of the parking ticket. Okay, so there may be people as well with those fines that are introduced as well. We do essentially need the fines in place. We need that enforcement, as you have said. But there may be people who say that this is another government's way of getting more revenue in.
There will always be that argument, but you know, the fine is totally avoidable. It's set up in a way to deter inconsiderate and irresponsible parking. You don't have to pay that fine. All that's required of a driver is to park properly, excuse me, and park with consideration, and recognise their timeline, recognise that they pay the proper tariff, recognise that they're supposed to park properly within a bay. I mean, we believe it's not a big ask, but if for your parking incorrectly is inconveniencing others.
Do you think the fines are too heavy?
They are the rate at the minute for a fine is £90 or £45,
which is quite a lot.
It's quite a lot, but mostly on a par with most other highway authorities. I believe it's somewhere in the region of 80-90 euros in the Republic, depending whether you're in Dundalk or whether you're in Dublin. I believe they're similarly across different authorities in England. They can be anything from £50 up to 150 or 180 in London, for example. But it is a deterrent, and the fine is same as a speeding fine, same as perhaps a fine for littering. It is a fine, and it's totally avoidable. At £90, I'd rather not pay £90. If I have to, and I recognise that I have parked incorrectly, I will want to pay it at the discounted rate of £45. Or, on the other hand, if I feel I've been unfairly treated, I would challenge it. And the challenge system is very transparent and very open. It allows an investigation to take place of your penalty charge notice, and if that penalty, that investigation could go one of two ways. It can go in your favour or it can go against you. If it goes in your favour, then the penalty charge notice is cancelled. It may be through some anomaly or through some mitigating circumstances that has arisen that wasn't apparent to the traffic attendant who issued the PC on the day. But on the other hand, it may be that you have quite simply parked incorrectly and you were perhaps oblivious to the requirement. And unfortunately, you know, we can't be accountable for your lack of knowledge of how to park properly.
Do you see the £90 ever being reduced in the near future, maybe down to the 45, maybe to the 50?
I know there are arguments to have it reduced. There are arguments to have it increased. There are arguments to have it stay where it is. There are arguments to have it at different tiers according to the severity of the penalty. I mean, there is a school of thought who feels that by running over your time by a couple or 3 minutes isn't such a heinous crime as parking, you know, obstructing a blind spot or stopped on a pedestrian crossing, hampering children's safe passage across a pedestrian crossing. But as it stands at the minute, it did take an increase from £60 to £90 just in 2012. But to increase to bring to people's to heighten awareness, so to speak, of the difficulty they're causing by parking improperly. But also, whilst whether it's £90 or £190, I know it's a lot of money, but it is an avoidable charge.
I mean, you're saying there that it is avoidable. At the end of the day, it really is. There's road markings, there's boxes, there's signs to tell us when to park, how to park, where to park. Where do you think the people are going wrong?
It may be just old habits. I mean, this is still, albeit that we introduced decriminalised parking in 2006, there was a whole new level of requirement that came with that at the time. And you know, we're all drivers. You know, the questions that you would expect of a driver being asked to park properly are perhaps the same questions that would be asked at your driving test that would either pass or fail you. You know, there is an expectation that drivers would know how to park properly. I mean, simple things that would cause people to be issued with a parking a penalty charge notice would be running over their time in a car park. And often, you know, we do recognise that people's appointments can run on, a bit of doctor's appointment or a hair appointment. They've maybe only put £1 you know, money in for 1 hour or 2 hours, and then
for things like this, if their appointment's running over by a few minutes or whatever, is there any way that that fine can be gotten rid of?
Not at the moment, but be aware that whenever an expiry time is reached, no penalty charges notice will ever be issued until at least a further 10 minutes has expired.
Does that mean you're allowed 10 minutes after your time?
You are.
Okay.
That is correct. It's not designed to give you an extra 10 minutes, but it's designed to allow any unforeseen circumstance that should arise that quite simply a penalty charge notice will not be issued until 10 minutes after the expiry time. But I could just also maybe highlight another sort of method to help motorists overcome that problem. Yes, one of the biggest concerns is what we've heard it termed as time pressure. You've parked up, you've put your money in the machine for a certain period of time, and you have been caught short. Your time's running on, and you must rush back either to put more money into the car park or to take the car away. We in recognition that we've introduced a new system, it's a cashless payment. You still pay for the parking event, but you don't need to wonder, have I enough small change? You don't have to stand out at a parking machine in the wet, rainy days. You can drive into a car park and register with a company called Park Mobile. And what
is that free, is it?
It's free to register, but you must register with your debit or credit cards. You're paying for your parking at the same rate. However, instead of finding change to start your parking, you simply ring either your mobile phone or your smartphone application. It will activate a parking event for you, and you simply stop it when it suits you. You simply start and stop it when it suits you.
And no extra costs.
There is I will have to say there is a 15p service charge for that towards Park Mobile.
Every time you use?
Every time for every parking event. So not to start or stop, but every time you use it for an event.
Okay.
So to start and stop a parking event will cost you 15p.
Okay.
But the feedback is that's a very worthwhile 15 pence to avoid having to rush back to take the stress out of shopping, to allow you to enjoy, to relax, and take the stress out of having to rush back or that appointment running on.
And is this introduced at the minute?
It's on every car park in Northern Ireland and every on-street controlled parking zone in Northern Ireland. That's the three on-street charge towns in Northern Ireland are Newry, Lisburn and Belfast. And you can avail of this cashless system called Park Mobile in all situations.
Fantastic. Hugh, thank you very much for coming in today to talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, after the break, we will be taking a bigger insight into the car parking right here in the Newry and Mourne district. That's after the break.
We're a digital solution company with our headquarters in Ireland. We have, with colleagues in the United States, in Hungary and in India, developed what we believe to be the most cost-effective, the most simple to implement digital signage solution for every type of business that wants to increase sales and add to the quality of experience for their customer and their audience. Digital signage is just a fancy phrase for a method of displaying your product or services on devices and screens, televisions as well, engaging with your customer and helping your customer understand exactly what you do, what services you provide, and how your customer can access the same. And it all happens through the simplicity of this little box. If you're a retail business anywhere in the world, contact us and get a free digital signage trial. Now, to see how we power local internet television, please go to the aboutdestinationnewry.com channel. And to review or join our business network, please go to the Local Business Network channel. Thank you.
Welcome back. Residents of Newry and Mourne became outraged when the new parking charges were brought into Daisy-Hill Hospital. I took an insight into parking charges in Daisy-Hill to find out why the charges exist. Car parking has been introduced in Daisy-Hill Hospital recently. There are a number of car parks on the site providing 423 spaces, with the majority of car parking at Daisy-Hill being free of charge. I spoke to Anita Carroll, Assistant Director of Acute Services for the Trust, who is responsible for car parking earlier in the week at Daisy-Hill to find out why these charges are in place. So I want to ask you first of all, I mean, at Daisy-Hill, when the patients come up here, just for a voice for the people, first of all, why are the patients being charged to park the car here?
Okay, well I suppose first of all, we'd need to say we've got a range of car parking here in terms of we have a lot of free car parking, but 75 to 80% of it is all free, and we just have about 100 spaces that people are being asked to pay for, and it's really been asked to pay as a contribution if they want to park closer, easier proximity and access into the hospital. So that's part of the reason. It is part of the regional strategy for car parking across Northern Ireland, so it's just part of that process that we have adopted some pay car parking on this site and also on our other hospital site at Craigavon as well. So it gives the opportunity that people at short notice will have an accessible car parking space.
And the money as well that the people pay for the car parks, where exactly does that money go to?
Well, a lot of the money is just reinvested back in the infrastructure. I mean, we have a lot of CCTV coverage in our car parks for security reasons. We've invested in additional lighting in the car parks, and just to keep the car parks resurfaced and to mark out disabled bays. All of those things cost a lot of money that otherwise we would have to take away from frontline services and redirect into car parking. So it gives us the opportunity to use that sort of piece of money, I suppose, to put towards car parking.
So in actual fact, what we're paying for goes right back towards us for all these benefits.
Well, it does, and I suppose, in general, the public find that pay car parking, it's not excessive amounts that we charge on either of the sites.
How much is it at the moment?
Well, for the first hour, it's like £1, and then it goes up 50 pence.
So it's not that much, really. It's not
no,
that
it's
much.
not. And I suppose it is important to say we do work through the regional exemptions. So if people have particular reasons for being in hospital a lot, for example, if they have a sick child or somebody in the high dependency unit who's very ill, that they're going to spend a lot of time here visiting, and obviously things like renal services that we provide here, which would mean you're coming up for dialysis 3 days a week. For all of those people, they're exempt. Do you know, so we do try to look at individual circumstances and make it, I suppose, as accessible to everyone, and for their sets of circumstances, that they're not financially burdened at times, say when they have somebody who's very ill.
Everyone's accommodated for. Everybody's accommodated. So, as you said earlier, you said that 75% are free car parking around the car parks. But a lot of people don't understand that this is the case. Why do you think that people don't realise that there are 5 other free car parks within Daisy Hill?
Well, we do our best with the signage, and we have done mail drops in the past attached to appointment letters or whatever, and we do try and give people that information. I don't know if the perception is that it's all pay. I'm not sure why, because it is only one barriered car park, which is about 104, 105 spaces in it. But the rest of the spaces, okay, some of them will involve a little bit more of a walk into the hospital, but
it's not that far. It's not that far.
No, it's not.
It's within the
Absolutely
grounds.
not. It is. Oh, it's all within the grounds. You know. So, I mean, we do our very best in terms of even our website information to tell people about the car parking and where they are, and lay out the site maps and whatever.
So all in all, the car park in the Daisy Hill, it isn't a high price. We're getting the benefits right back towards us, and 75% are free.
Yeah, free of charge. That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you have it. Thanks to Anita Carroll from Daisy Hill. Now, after the break, we will be finding out how local shops in Newry feel about the car parking charges outside their shops. We'll be back in just a moment. Hello and welcome back to the show. Hugh from Transport Northern Ireland Parking Enforcement Unit told us earlier how he believes the shops in Newry and Mourne were in favour of the car parking charges because of the amount of time people were parking on the street, causing customers not to get a parking space. Now, I went out in the Newry area earlier this week to speak to the shop owners and the managers to find out their views on car parking charges. Feel about the car parking charges here in Newry?
Well, I have to say that I'm delighted that the Minister saw fit to give the £1 for 5-hour parking charges around the car parks, because we were very, very angry when the Minister took away the pay on exit parking, which was an absolute disgrace. It was so-called money saver, and even there was an immediate drop in turnover in the car parks when it happened, because it made it difficult for people to plan their shopping, because no one knows how long they're going to be when they're shopping, when they meet friends, when they go for a coffee. The Minister saw fit to take that freedom away from them, which of course is part of the assault on the town centres by the narrow thinking of our political masters. But as for the on-street parking, I think it's not too bad, because in the past we have seen people who maybe are working in Belfast and didn't want to leave their cars parked out of town. They park them in town and go off to Belfast and work for the day. At least it gave us the turnover of parking on the streets. So at the moment, I would prefer if there was a return to pay on exit in the car parks, but street parking I think is fine.
Has the parking charges on the street have any impact on your business?
Well, yes, we saw an immediate drop-off when the pay and exit was taken away. When the brought in the charges at first, people were slightly disorientated, but I mean it's the same in every town right throughout the north and south of Ireland. I mean, I've actually paid £1.60 for an hour's parking in Cheltenham in England, so I think our 40p charge isn't too bad. But has it damaged business? No. Has it brought a bit of business into town? Yes, because people can park near the shops. There's quite a long walk in the shopping centres from the car parks to the shops, so they like to be able to get a wee bit closer to the shops.
So it's had a good impact for the local shops on the street?
Generally, yes. We see quite a significant upturn in trade here in the Cathedral Quarter in Newry.
Some people may believe that small towns in Northern Ireland are picking up traffic again and are busier than ever due to the rise in the high parking charges in the city. Those wanting a small amount of groceries are not willing to pay for the charges and are more likely to shop in the local towns and villages. This results in the smaller towns getting the business that is being pushed away from the big cities. This brings back the old traditional way of local shopping in small local shops rather than the bigger cities, meaning booming business for small town shop owners. Earlier, we also spoke to Hugh from Transport Northern Ireland Parking Enforcement Unit about how he was convinced that the streets of Newry would be chaos without traffic enforcement. Now, in 2011, a Welsh town carried out an experiment for 1 year and took traffic wardens off the streets completely. It might sound like a dream to all of us, but here's what really happened. We would all like to get rid of the traffic enforcement and be left free to park wherever we want. But we should be careful what we wish for, judging by a unique social experiment that appears to have gone drastically wrong in West Wales. In 2011, thanks to a bureaucratic mix-up between the police and the council, police laid off all 3 traffic wardens in the town in West Wales. The result was bedlam, chaos and even violence, as the town's public enjoyed the parking free-for-all that followed. Citizens were free to park wherever they please, without fear of prosecution. The people of the town thought it was great until there was chaos. Everywhere you looked, there were cars parked where they shouldn't be, on single yellow lines, on double yellow lines, next to bus stops, on pavement, and most bold of all, in just about every disabled parking space available. What started as a great idea ended in disaster. Enforcement in towns around the country are there to avoid this chaos, to ensure safe parking, a steady flow of traffic, and a space for all to park. It would simply be chaos without the enforcement. And there you have it. The charges are amongst the lowest rates in Europe. The money goes towards paying for the maintenance of the car parks and the clean streets. And with having to pay for parking on the streets in the cities, it's driving us back to the small villages and towns to keep the local shopkeepers in business. On top of that, I'm pretty sure you don't want Newry turning out to be like that town in Wales anytime soon. So it's going to be up to you. If you want to continue to pay the charges in the city to supply money for road maintenance, car park security, and our lovely clean streets and stop Newry from chaos, the decision is yours. Have a lovely evening, and I'll see you next week right here, Friday 7 p.m. on Destination Insight.